How was the last exercise for you guys? Was that amazing? Does anyone want to share theirs real quick? Sorry, Dave. I'm so sorry. All right, Dave's going to have a couple of you guys read them through so we can kind of hear.
So the concept of this is when all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So 3 years ago, I was on the phone with this incredibly smart guy. His name was Brian, and his wife had over 300 migraine a year. That's 6 days out of the week. That's 6 days out of the week. Sorry, this thing just disappeared from my screen. So he was on the verge of crying because his kids literally were bringing his mom toys every single morning to take away their pain because hopefully she'd get out of the bed that day. So as I get to know Brian more, he has his PhD in genetics and nutrition, and this guy literally did everything he possibly could, and his best is probably better than most anybody else's. He called me back then because we were experts in hormones, and I'm usually working with people that are like low T or menopause and try to get more energy. And so we'd be on the phone for hours trying to figure this thing out. And after a few months of working together, bam, all of a sudden it's like her migraine started to get better. Like they just started reducing. And then all of a sudden she's now at the point where all it does was it was just induced by the weather. And, you know, we still joke how I wish we could just control the weather and she'd have nothing. She'd be fine. But we obviously, you know, that's not possible. So I hired Brian right away. And together we created this program called Become a Nutritional Genius, because what you think is healthy, and what's so amazing to me is that, you know, what I thought was healthy and what most people think was healthy might not be healthy for you or for yourself. So now we'll fast forward a couple of years, and it's about a year ago, and I was on the phone with another patient. Her name was Mary. And again, hormone therapy, 20 migraines a month for decades, nothing's working. You know, I got to confess, as a doctor, it's like the worst feeling in the world when you're sitting there and someone's coming to you for help and you can't do anything about it. So I was like, Mary, just start over. Just start over with everything. You know, I mean, she starts telling me about her migraine. Then she tells me something about her mom. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, her mom had the same condition that Brian's mother-in-law had. So I said, you know, Mary, I'll be right back. You know, I mean, I called up Brian. I was like, listen, tell me everything you did with your wife. Tell me everything you did. Because, you know, she started improving, but tell me everything. So we did the exact same thing for Mary. I paid for it. She couldn't afford it at the time. And all of a sudden, she starts getting better.
Okay, can I pause you?
Yeah.
Where are we in this framework?
The problem I encountered.
What's that?
The problem. I was with Mary and I couldn't get her better.
So you had an internal struggle or external struggle?
It was a external.
Okay. Let's step back. I want to pause because you're going way too deep into where we're at. So okay. Remember the story I told at the end? I want to break it down like that for this example. So I want to say, my backstory is that I did this. I had a problem that I encountered that made me feel this. The external struggle, I want to simplify it for right now, because we're going to start going deeper into it, but I want to follow this framework that we kind of left off with. Do you have it written out kind of like that?
Yeah, I think the backstory was just a little bit too long, because I think I'm at like the last... I
want the backstory in one sentence. Like each of these should be one sentence for where we are right now in the process.
So the backstory was I was only doing one thing to fix the migraine. I was dealing with somebody who I could not make it better. The epiphany I had was that when we combined everything together, that was what would work. And then when I looked back, after I found out, when we looked back to look at everybody who had done all of the testing, and we looked at everything at the same time and started there, and that wasn't caused by trauma, then our success was over 90%. And that's when we created this program that said basically, if you fit the criteria and our assessment and testing shows that we can do something about it, then there's a chance that we can stop the pain and get your life back.
Okay. So then what happened? So then you take action?
We created the program to systematize it, to allow people to go through that process. Do they meet the criteria, do the testing, and then
okay. And what was the result you experienced at the end?
People got their lives back. People's migraine went away.
All right, cool. That's what I'm looking right now. You guys are all overachievers. You're jumping like 12 steps too fast. But yeah, because we'll get into more of the story because you're doing good, but I wanted to step back to this part because this is kind of where we left off on. So, okay. Cool. Anyone else want to share this process that they wrote out?
Okay, so my backstory is I'm a trained teacher and I wanted to help my child with learning difficulties to read and spell and be happy. The problem I encountered was that my teacher training did not give me the skills to help my son, so I felt pretty devastated. My external issue was if I can't help, then no other teacher can help and school's not going to help. My internal struggle was then I'll have failed as a parent if I can't help him. The epiphany was if I use scientifically validated research into neuroscience, and dyslexia, then I would be able to find the answer. My plan was to create a teaching method using 7 components that could teach any child to read and spell. If I failed, my child would end up with mental health issues and no future to look forward to. If I succeeded, so my action plan was to start studying the English language and how to apply it to my 7 components and then create a complete system. The result I achieved was I had massive success because my son is now achieving A's and B's for English in his final years of high school, and I'm helping other children to do that as well.
Okay, so how to come up with a system? It's, after 4 years of college and 2 years internship working at a hospital as a registered dietitian, after 5 years, I encountered a dietitian that had been working there for 10 years and was making $25,000 a year. So I felt frustrated that after all this schooling and all this knowledge that I was going to be broke. That prompted me to go back into the health and fitness industry. So I got a better job with a better paycheck, but then noticed that I was still stuck based on trading hours for dollars. So that was the external struggle. The internal was that, I forgot more about nutrition than most people will ever learn, but I still felt like a failure because even though I had degrees, etc., I felt trapped in a job facing a salary cap based again on trading dollars, hours for dollars. The epiphany was that I created a system to streamline. My wife wrote this, I was dictating it, so. To streamline? Working with clients, getting great results, and that they continue to pay me even after they quit working with me. The plan was that I designed nutrition software that allowed custom nutrition plans, streamlined the process, increased value for the customer, and allowed them to click and choose, so they could click and choose different foods. Faster and easier to see the clients and increase income. If I failed, I would be faced with burnout and feeling like a failure, not able to help as many people. And the action I took was using a software. I got the idea to apply it and train I used to also help interns and dietetic interns on software to make it easier for them as they launch their practice, and then realized that a complete customizable system would be able to help other dietitians, RDs, gym owners, etc. And then the second epiphany within the epiphany was that having all the nutrition knowledge and software wasn't enough. They also needed business training and sales and motivational trainers, so I put it all together in a package to help them get a shortcut and created the Nutrition Business Institute, or the What Works Nutrition Solution System.
Okay. All right, let's move on from there. That's good. Cool. So hopefully that outline can serve as a framework, because every story there's like the framework. And now I want to transition to, because part is the framework, and the second part is like how you actually tell the story. So we're going to jump to that. All right. So as most of you guys, I'm sure, know and are aware and notice, right? Like some people that you tell you stories, like have you captivated and you're sucked in, right? Other times people tell you stories and you glaze over and you're like sitting there thinking like, will this person please die? Or please let something happen. In fact, this is probably really bad. Like when people are talking to me and I'm like telling me a story and I'm zoned out, like I like will sit there and I'll like have conversations with them, like yelling at them and stuff. And just like, I wonder if they notice that I'm like yelling at them in my head, like, ugh. So there's good storytelling and there's bad storytelling. And so I want to kind of show you guys some of the things to help make your storytelling more compelling and more interesting, so that people will be like sucked in and listening to what you're saying, as opposed to sitting there like yelling at you like I do sometimes when people are telling me stories. So a couple things that I'm kind of cover. So the first one, and this is hard for most people, especially people that are really smart. Good thing that I've got going for me is I'm not that smart. Therefore, I'm really good at this part, is good stories are usually oversimplified. Like you have to simplify things more and more and more and more. I feel like when I'm creating a sales presentation or whatever, I feel like I'm handed this like huge rock, like boom, here's this big huge thing. And I got to come in and like start chiseling things off and chiseling and make them simpler and simpler and simpler till I get down to the very, very core like statue of like what I actually have to have. When I was in the Rippling business, they wanted me to write a video sales letter to explain the comp plan for this new company that was coming out. And so me and John, I'm not sure if John's still here, we had the unpleasant experience to sit through probably like 8 hours of lawyers explaining a comp plan. And they wanted us to make like a 5-minute video that was entertaining, engaging, got people sucked in to want to understand it and to be excited by it. And so after I watched the first 8 hours, I couldn't understand a word they said. So John went through and watched it all. And John took this huge, because John's very smart. So he took this crazy legal crap and was like, okay, this is what it means, Russell. So he kind of taking this block, we chiseled it down, and I had to go take that and figure out how do we, what's the most simplest, tiniest, easiest form for us to be able to do so that when we present this to someone, they're like, oh, that's really, really easy, okay? And so for most of you guys, as you're telling your story, the biggest, one of the most important, most valuable things you will do every single time is how do we shorten it and shrink it and shrink it, shrink it, shrink it, shrink it, okay? You want to, it's okay to tell long stories, but even inside that, it comes down to all the details need to be tight and short and small, because the bigger it is, the more chance you have of people wandering off and their brain just disappearing, okay? And so, maybe tonight when we do some of the storytelling stuff, we'll have a buzzer. Every time you start wandering off, we'll just buzz you. Every time we get bored, so you'll know wow, I'm getting really boring. And you can get boring in 3 seconds, so it happened really, really fast as well. So it's the biggest thing is you have to learn how to oversimplify things. Okay, and the smart guys in the room and smart gals in the room have way more struggle in this than people like me who just, I can only understand the really simplified things, so I have to get to that, and then I'm like, that's all I got. Okay, so that's number one, is understanding oversimplification. This is true in not only storytelling, you think about it in music, think about the best songs in the world. Usually they've got 3 or 4 lyrics. We watched the video today, there's all 4 chords in almost every song, but the best songs do the best are very simple, very 2 or 3 words, it's not these big complex things. So simplification is the key. Number 2 is every time you hit into something that is a little bit complicated, we have to use a tool that I invented. I think I invented this. I invented the name of it at least. I call it's a kind of like bridge, okay? And so I'm going to show you guys a couple examples of videos here in a second that we did. And I want you to notice all of the it's kind of like bridges that I do. So what it's kind of like bridge looks like is it's kind of it's actually similar to this. Okay, so this is how it works. Every time you're telling a story, you're going to come to a concept that doesn't make sense, right, to the average human being, okay? Imagine next time you're telling a story, imagine you're telling it to me, and be so you start talking, you say a word, Russell won't understand that word. Just think about that, because I promise you, I won't understand, right? So this thing happens in your story. So for example, you'll see one of the examples, the word ketones, right? How many of you guys hear the word ketones? You're I know exactly what that is. Okay, how many of you guys would not have known that before 6 months ago? Okay. Right, so ketones, right? So in this video I'll show you, I say ketones, right? And then I realize that most people on earth do not know what that means. So then the next thing I say, it's kind of like, and then I've got to take somebody back over here to something that they already understand that's easy. I say ketones, it's kind of like having thousands of little motivational speakers running through your body. Boom, got you that fast. If I say it's kind of like ketones, I kept moving, all of a sudden you'd be like, what? Super complicated, you lost yourself, gone. Because every time you're going and there's something that has any level of complexity at all, you got to stop, do a kind of like bridge, so it bridges that gap, and oh, that's what it is, and it keeps moving on. Okay, Dave this morning took Ignite, the drink, and you drink, how many of you have drinking Ignite in here? So you drink it, and then 5 minutes later, your face starts tingling, And so he told me that today. I said, yeah, it's kind of like having an internal massage, someone massaging you from the inside. And that quick, it's I bridge that gap, right? And so you gotta start thinking about that over and over again. Is every time you hit any kind of complexity, you gotta stop and think about what is this similar to that they will naturally, that they will understand. Does that make sense? There's the picture of it. It's a kind of like bridge. So I've got 2 videos I'm gonna show you. The first one is the Rippling video. Again, this company is no longer in anywhere, but we wrote this video script, we launched it. Within 6 weeks, we got 1.5 million people to sign up to a website because of it. So the message was right, it was powerful, it worked. There were other issues why the company didn't take off. But if you listen to it, again, listen to the words, the Epiphany Bridge is the kind of all the things I'm doing to simplify this message so much that everybody they kind of buy into it. And then after that, we'll watch the Prove It one and kind of a similar thing.
Let me ask you a quick question. When you first heard about Facebook, how many people did you tell? Was it 10, 20, 30 people? How about Twitter or Instagram or Angry Birds? If you're like most people, then it probably went a little something like this. You had a great experience with a new product or service, and so you decided to tell a bunch of your friends, fans, or followers. For numbers' sake, let's just say you told 7 people. Then those 7 people each got excited to share it with 7 of their friends. Then those friends each started sharing it with their friends, and it keeps growing from there. And just like when you throw a stone in the middle of a calm lake, that one action you started quickly creates a ripple that expands until it consumes the whole lake. Now this is what we call the ripple effect. Those 7 people you told quickly became 49 people by your second ripple, 343 people by your third ripple, 2,401 by your fourth, and by your 5th level, you've already reached over 16,000 people. And it keeps growing from there. And that's if you just told 7 people. Imagine how big of a ripple you created the last time you got excited by a new product. It's crazy how much business you unknowingly brought to these companies. Even though you didn't know it at the time, you created a massive ripple. This form of viral word-of-mouth marketing has made the owners of Facebook, Instagram, and Angry Birds, and other companies you know very, very rich. But what about you? Wasn't it you that helped them to spread that message? Are you curious about how many people learned about those companies because you started a ripple effect? Doesn't it make sense that you should get paid for all of the customers that you brought to them? Just imagine what would have happened if a game like Angry Birds would have paid you 50 cents or $1 every time anyone in your entire ripple downloaded it. How much money would you have made sharing just that one game? And think about how many books, apps, and websites that you and your friends have shared over the last month. Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? You're doing all the marketing and the sales for these companies. They're making hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars from your efforts, yet you get nothing. Well, a little while ago, we asked ourselves these 2 important questions. First, when I started Ripple, how far does it go? And second, why aren't I getting paid from the ripple effect that I'm causing for these companies? These 2 questions kept us up at night. And at first, they made us angry, and then curious, and then a little excited. And that's why we created Rippling. It's a simple way to not only track your Ripple, but to get paid for it as well. Let me show you how it works. First, you download the Rippling app. Then within the app, you can invite all of your friends and followers to do the same. As they spread the word, we will track everything, showing you just how wide and deep your Ripple runs. So now your Ripple is spread quite literally around the globe. This is where the real fun begins, especially if the fact that Angry Birds is making a fortune from connections that you gave them makes you a little angry. Because after you sign up, you can power up and become a Rippling player. Players are those who know the value of their ripples and want to share in the profit from their ripples. Just imagine that every time you came across something cool, like a website, a book, or a movie, or the next time a hot new app came out, instead of telling your friends and making the company millions while you get nothing, simply check to see if they're eligible for Rippling commissions and blast them through your entire Ripple for a great payday every time. Doesn't that sound cool? Because at Rippling, we believe that you should be paid for the connections you have and the ripple that you can create. And that's just how it should be. So what are you waiting for? Let's start your first Ripple now.
All right, who's signing up? It worked. I got 1.5 million people to sign up for something in 6 weeks. So the messaging worked right. The company didn't ever work, but the messaging was awesome. All right, I'm going to show you guys another one now. This is the keto video. So this is kind of backstory on this. When Prove It launched, before they launched, I got some of the magic powder in a sack. It was a white little sack. I drank it. I loved it. And Brian, who'd done Rippling, it was his company. He was like, I need you to come back in and do the stuff for Prove It. And I was like, no, dude, I hate network marketing. Remember Rippling? Yeah, that was horrible. I don't want to do that again. He's like, I need you, man. I need you. So finally, they convinced me to make a video for them. And so that's what this video is. And a couple things to note on this next one. The first video pitch that they wrote and sent me to critique, it was like super obvious, like trying to pitch that ketones were good and the soldiers work off ketones. And if you look at all successful people in the history of time have been on ketosis. Jesus was on ketosis. Like all these, like that's how they're pitching this whole thing to me, right? And I'm like, that's like the worst video ever. Like that doesn't convince me of anything. And at the time, I was living a kind of ketogenic diet at the time, and I was like, what was it? I started this epiphany bridge thing. What was it that got me interested initially into trying to live my lifestyle this way? And I remember what happened was probably like a year prior to that, I was at a marketing event, and one of my buddies, his name's Aaron Lilly, and I went to a restaurant. We were eating, and I was ordering like amazing food, like all sorts of the good stuff, and he was ordering like chicken and beans and like weird things, and I was like, dude, like you're missing like half of the meal, and he was like, no, this is what I do. And he's like, I eat high fat and vegetables and protein. That's all I eat. And I was like, that's weird. Like, why would you do that? And then he explained something to me. He said, it's kind of like a campfire. He's like, if you have a campfire, right, and you have kindling and you throw it on the fire, kindling burns really fast, but it goes away, right? He's He's like, kindling is kind of like carbs. He's like, that's the reason why when you eat cereal in the morning, you eat it, and you're full for like 5 seconds, and 2 minutes later, you're like, I need some more Captain Crunch, and you keep eating it because like it's like the kindling, it burns really, really fast, right? He's like, protein is more similar to like logs, like it sits in there and it burns longer and it's better. Because like the best are coals. Is like coals are like fat, like you get coals in there and they'll burn, they'll keep you warm forever. And as soon as he explained that to me, like that was like my epiphany. I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. And I started thinking, every time, even to this day, every time I eat carbs now, like I'm very conscious of like there's gonna be something really fast and it's gonna crash, right? And I'm very aware of it now. Like I had churros for lunch, they were awesome. I had a lot of them. And I'm very conscious of like, I'm gonna crash because of that. But like I know that, right? But that was the epiphany gave it to me. So when I sat down to write this video, I wrote the entire sales video in about an hour. And I didn't need a lot because I understood, like I already had my epiphany, I knew what it was, and went through there. And every time I got stuck on like something in the explanation process, you'll notice like I always do these little bridges back. I bridge back to motivational speakers, I bridge back to Pac-Man, I bridge back to everything very common things that they would know, I bring back to. So they launched this video, the first 6 months, they did $20 million with it. Year one, they'll probably be $40 to $50 million. And so, I mean, you get the message right and it connects people and you can give the people that epiphany, like, it'll make companies, make your company blow up really, really fast. So let me share with you guys this video.
Have you ever built a campfire before? If so, did you know that by building that fire, you've actually unlocked the power for unlimited energy, fat loss, and focus? Let me explain. When you build a campfire, there are 3 types of fuel that you can use: kindling, logs, and coal. Now, the kindling is the easiest to catch on fire. It burns fast, and if you're not careful, it'll be gone before the larger logs even catch on fire. The logs take a little bit longer to catch on fire, but if you're able to burn them correctly, eventually they will catch the coals on fire and give you a nice long heat that'll keep you warm throughout the night. So how does knowing that give you unlimited energy, fat loss, and focus? Well, did you know that there are also 3 types of fuel that run your body? Carbs, proteins, and fats. And each one works differently inside of you. The first is carbs. Yes, we love them, and yes, we crave them, and as soon as we start to eat them, we get an instant burst of energy, but unfortunately, it doesn't last long, and we're left with a crash and a constant craving for more. And next, we shift to the proteins, the building blocks for our muscles, but also they can actually be the barrier that keeps us from losing fat. And then there is the last and the best source of fuel. We call this source fat. And like the coal, if you can catch it on fire, it'll give you the longest and the best source of energy. But for most people, it's almost impossible to get to a state where they can actually burn fat. Now, this is a state we call ketosis. So why is it so hard? Well, it starts with the kindling, or the carbs. We eat some, but they quickly burn off, causing our energy to drop and giving us cravings for more. We can keep throwing these sticks on the fire, but they will burn fast and never give us the consistent warmth or energy that we need. When you start to add proteins to this fire, your body can burn these logs as fuel a little bit longer, yet it still doesn't compare to what happens when you get your body to a state where it can actually burn fat. So why do we want to burn fats? Well, a few reasons. Common sense says that burning fats, well, it helps us lose fat, and he's right. But on top of that, when you get to a state where you're burning pure fats, they release ketones into your body. And these little ketones are like thousands of little motivational speakers running through your body. They give you energy, they give you focus, they make you feel incredible, and yes, they make the fat melt off your body because it's finally being burned off. It's no longer being guarded by the carbs and the proteins. So if getting through the carbs and the proteins and into the fats is so important, then why are we doing it each day? Well, the answer is because it's hard. To get our best fuel source and start burning fats and releasing ketones, the average person will have to work out 10 times harder and longer than they are now. They've got to burn through all of their carbs and all of their proteins, and then, and only then, will they finally hit their fat. Yet that's where the magic happens. But even for the most extreme people who have learned to biohack their own bodies to get into a state of ketosis, it can often take weeks or months to even get there. But when they are in that state, they are on. Perfect energy, perfect focus, and perfect fat loss. It's kind of like playing the game Pac-Man, where most of the game you spend running away from the ghost, but every once in a while, Pac-Man will eat one of those power pellets and everything suddenly changes. Instead of running away from the ghost, you're on fire and you start actually chasing the ghost, and the game becomes yours for the taking. That's how it feels when you're in ketosis. Life literally becomes yours for the taking. It's sad, but most people spend their whole life like Pac-Man at the beginning of the game, trying to stay safe and secure, not even knowing that the power pellets exist, not knowing what it's like to be on. Now, as I'm sure you can tell, having these ketones in your blood is the goal. But how do we get there without spending weeks or months biohacking our way into ketosis? Well, that's a question we asked ourselves a few years ago. And at first, it seemed like an impossible question. But recently, some scientists we work with have stumbled upon a new formula that actually made it possible. We call this new formula the Ketone Operating System, or Keto OS for short. Within just 60 minutes of taking it, your body almost instantly goes into ketosis. Check out how this works. Before Keto OS, they're not in ketosis. Within less than 60 minutes after taking Keto OS, your body is in nutritional ketosis. Isn't that awesome? Don't just take our word for it. We want to ship you 3 sample packs of Keto OS and some ketone test strips for just $10. And do the test and prove it to yourself. After you do, you'll discover a few things. First, Keto OS is the best tasting health drink you've ever had. Second, you'll see your body almost instantly go into nutritional ketosis. And third, you'll almost instantly feel what world-class athletes and biohackers spend weeks trying to accomplish. Your body will be in nutritional ketosis, and you'll get all the benefits that come with that. Increased fat loss, more mental clarity and focus, tons of extra energy. So do you want to experience what it feels like to be in ketosis? If so, then get the 3 sample packs now for just $10 and find out what it feels like to unlock your energy, fat loss, and focus.
All right, who's sold? Yes. Hopefully both those things kind of showed you like how I go and take like kind of complex ideas and how do we break them down and simplify them through epiphany bridges and kind of like scripts and things like that, because we got to make things very, very simple. I talked about this in a couple of inner circle meetings, but a lot of times when we're writing and we're telling stories and we're doing stuff like that, like us, especially as educators and things like that, like we kind of speak at people at a higher level. And if you look at like the level you need to be speaking to people at for them to understand and really grasp something, it's like a 2nd to a 3rd grade level. If you get above that, you're losing people all over the place. In fact, this is like the coolest study I ever read. So after the first, Donald Trump's first presidential nomination speech, these guys took, there's software, there's sites online you can take written things and run it through it, and it'll show you like what grade level they were written at. And they took Trump's speeches and they ran it through it, and he speaks at a 3rd grade level, which is why so many people do connect with him. And so you got to start simplifying things out, and the more and more simple you can do it is through this process. It's all about simplification, building bridges every time you hit any kind of like complex idea or concept, things that people can't experience through words, right? Like you guys can't experience what it feels like to be in ketosis. So I'm like, well, what does it feel like? What does it feel like? And then Pac-Man, like everyone knows what Pac-Man is, right? So that's how I kind of bridged that gap back there and tied it to something that they can relate to. Okay, so I'm always thinking like, this doesn't make sense. What do they have in their world that they do understand that's similar, that I can show that, and then boom, the complexity instantly disappears. Because in that video, as soon as I said ketosis, like everyone's minds went up, and then I was talking about tons of middle motivational speakers running around, and you have energy and fat loss and focus. All you know is like, I don't even know what ketosis is, but that sounds awesome. I want that. And you forgot about the word ketosis. You just remember energy, fat loss, focus, and that's the part you remember. And so that's some of the things we do. All right, next thing, and this is one of the keys, and this is, if you learn nothing else from the storytelling process besides this next piece, this will be worth everything for you. So you have to understand that most stories we tell are like, hey, so I did this is the backstory, and this is what happened, I went through here, and you kind of go through the process, right? And the problem with that is that there's not, typically the way that most of us tell stories, there's not feeling. Like we have to dig deeper and actually get to the feelings that people feel. In film, when people tell stories, there's so many cool things that we don't have. Like I can't like start telling a story and like, hey, cue the music track, like cue this, and like have all these things, right? But when they do that, you can feel it. Like when you watch movies, good movies, you get sucked in and you feel like, sometimes you feel like this pit in your stomach or this thing, right? So a lot of us were told this story like, hey, so yeah, I grew up in a Nazi concentration camp, it sucked, and then like one day they took me in and then they killed my mom in front of me, like that was really bad. And so then I decided I needed to, blah, blah. And that's like how some of you guys tell your stories, okay? And you're like, wow, that sounds like it was bad, but like you don't feel it, right? So we had to come back, like how do we make people feel as we're telling a story? And again, Dagan Smith was the one that taught me this process, and I've done it 3 or 4 times on you guys today. I'm not sure if you've noticed it. Earlier I was talking about, I can't remember what story it was. I was talking about the pressure I felt in something. And I was like, it felt kind of like a lead vest was on my shoulders and it was pressing down on my chest. You remember talking about that? I'm trying to get you guys to feel something, right? So like when I'm especially as usually you're going through the internal and the external struggles, like I want to go deep with you. So like if I'm talking about an internal struggle, I'll be like, it was frustrating. I got home and my wife was, this is a totally made up story, so this has not, I don't even know where I'm going yet, but don't think this really happened to my wife and I, because I don't even know where I'm going. So I got home from work, and I walked in the door, and my wife was there, and I knew that she was going to be upset. In fact, when I was driving home, because I knew she was there, I had this nervous feeling in my stomach, and as I felt that feeling, I could feel like my head was kind of pounding, and I had this anxious, I knew I didn't want to go because I had this anxious feeling, and my palms were kind of sweaty, and so I was going through the door, and I got there, I got the keys out, and I kind of fumbled my keys because I was just so nervous, and I finally went through the door, and I opened the door, and as I opened, I could hear the door squeaking, and it kind of squeaked, and I knew, as soon as I knew that she was going to know I was there, and I walked through the door, and I stood up, and it was completely black, but I could feel her, I knew that she was there, I could almost hear her breathing, and as soon as I did that, I knew I was done. Did you guys feel that a little bit? So I'm trying to explain how I'm feeling, because as soon as I start explaining how I'm feeling, the audience will start feeling that. I talk about my sweaty palms, your palms will start sweating. I talk about my heart beating, you'll feel that. You start looking at the things that are happening. Good authors and books do this really well. They're looking at this invisible scenery, and they're explaining all the pieces of it and how they're feeling internally and the connection of the thing. And so that's what you have to do when you start telling your stories, is getting deep into that piece of it. Because the more of that you bring, the more people will feel this emotional reset. They won't even know what's happening. They'll just be like, oh, my hands are sweating, my heart's beating fast. And it's because you're telling them a story about it as well. And so I don't do this all the time, but when I do tell stories, I'm always trying to get more at emotional, at adding in these feelings. Because if I can add in those feelings, it changes the whole dynamic. Right? I could tell that same story of Magneto now and explain the things and the pain in his face and how he felt and start going through all those details, and you'd feel it a lot more than the way I told it earlier, right? So that's the thing that's kind of hard to do, but I want you guys thinking through that as you're telling these stories, slowing down and thinking about how you felt and explaining all those things, especially to the senses, like what you heard, what you smelled, what you felt, the internal stresses and pressures and things like that. When you get that piece of it, that's how these stories become just emotional, and you can connect with people at a whole different level. Any questions about the feeling stuff at all?
It's like painting a picture, though. Really, you're giving the visual components as well, even though it's what you're feeling, but you're literally painting a picture for them, so they see what you saw and feel what you felt.
Yeah, they experience it with you. That's how that whole epiphany that you want them experiencing with you. Like Lucho, I was just thinking about when you told your story about you found out these guys are making way more money. I'd be I was sitting in this place, I was working hard, all the stress was happening, and talk about the stress, which is digging into internal. I went through the stress, and I knew this and that, and you're painting this whole picture of that, and then they're experiencing that epiphany with you because they feel like they're sitting there with you.
Yeah, so I've heard this concept you're talking about, showing the five senses, and I've heard it been called going in scene, so to speak, like showing a movie scene. My question is, how often should you be going in scene to keep your story tight? And obviously, it's going to depend on the length of the story, but I think that's something I struggle with when I'm telling a story, is how often do I put the person in scene? You know what I mean? To keep it tight, right?
Yeah. I don't know the exact answer to that. It's not like a formula 1%, it's more kind of you feel it when I start telling stories, you can tell it's weird. I was talking to somebody yesterday, it's been a big blur, but if you guys, who here has spoken in front of an audience before? Probably most everyone, right? You notice you walk in a room and then you start talking and the energy of the audience will change the presentation huge dramatically. It's like a story, I'll start going and you'll sense people get into something, and then I'll go deeper there. Other times you're going through something it's not really feeling it, so I'll just kind of move on. Best time I ever understood this, this is probably 8 or 9 years ago. We wanted to do an event here in Boise, so we advertised it on radio and direct mail, a bunch of things to get people to come. So we were doing 3 events in one day. Each one was supposed to be an hour long. Exact same presentation each time. First group showed up, we had 30 people in the room, and it was amazing. I think it was going for 2 hours because I was just fed off the energy. It was amazing. Next group, we had 2 people show up. And that presentation, the exact same presentation, took 12 minutes. And then I was done. I'm well, you guys can go home now. And then the third presentation, we had a good group again, and it went another hour and a half. So it's weird how that energy is. So I think a lot of it's kind of feeling that. I wish there was a better answer I wish there was more of a technical, but it's more of a feeling thing. And at least for me, when I start on something, I kind of feel where I should go deeper and where I shouldn't. And I don't know how that is. All right, so adding feeling, that's a big piece that most people struggle with. And then the last one I talk about is just trial closes. And we've talked a lot in these groups about trial closes. But it is so important. The more I do them, the better they work, and the more consistently I do them. And some like ninja things that nobody knows you're doing, except for you guys all know when I do them, but they're just powerful. So putting trial closes in all the time, especially like the most important time to do trial close is like after something amazing has happened. So the end result of your story, after you share testimonial, whatever that is, most of us like, we talk about the result, and then like we get this nervousness because it's like, I feel like I'm bragging or whatever, like everything happens and you jump to the next thing really quick and you bail ship. That's the worst thing to do. Like you want to marinate the result. Like so you get the result, you share the result, like it's time to stop and you gotta like let people, because people like, they gotta accept that and think about it and like let it marinate for a while. As soon as I share the result or I share test or whatever it is, I stop and I sit back and then I let it marinate. I'm like, isn't that awesome? Like you guys see what just happened? Can you imagine what would that be if that happened to you? The next 6 months, that changed your life the same way, and I start driving all these trial closes, boom, boom, and I'll probably drop, anyway, 5, 10, 15 or more every time I do that, because I want that to marinate and to resonate. And so don't share the best and most important part and then just walk away like so many people do. Like that's the time to stop, let it marinate, sit back, and just like trial close like crazy. Like get people visualizing and thinking about it and make them want that same result. Because if they want that same result, and they took one of this whole epiphany, bridge with you, this whole huge story, now they've got no other option than to like do that thing and follow it. Okay, so that's trial closes. I don't have a list. There's a whole, if you look at the 108 split test book, there's a whole bunch of them. I put a list in the back. The problem is there's like infinitely many. We should all like make a doc and everyone adds to them. But it's any question to get people to say yes, right? To get them to nod their head. Like, isn't this cool? Like, you guys getting this? Isn't this amazing? Can you imagine what your life would be like? Just anything to get them to be like, yes, 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 yes. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to come back to this now, and I want you to take the story that you kind of wrote out this way, and I want you to flush this out into an actual story. I want you to add in some feeling, I want you to add in some pieces, some things to kind of explain it. And so maybe I would recommend, we gave you guys 10 blank pages of paper this time in the binder in case you knew, but kind of writing it out more as a story. And it's not going to be perfect. I don't want it written word for word, but kind of writing it out that way. And then what we're going to do after about 15 minutes, when you guys say you're done, we're going to break you guys into groups of probably 5, and I want each person to tell everyone else in the group your story. I want everyone to kind of have a chance to tell it. And the story should probably be 5 minutes or so long to tell it. I want you guys to get into the feeling and the emotion and all those different pieces of it so you can connect. And then each group is going to pick a winner of their group. And the winners come up here, and they're going to share their stories, and then we'll all vote on the winner of that, and they're going to get some money. Hey, where's the money at? Do we have some? We got $501 bills. Is that right there? All right, we got $501 bills for the winner of this story. So it's worth it putting in some effort into this. Okay, so recap what's going to happen. First thing, we're going to spend 15 minutes of you guys one-on-one by yourselves, thinking through your story, typing it, writing it out, following the same structure, but adding in some of these elements. The trial closes, the feeling, the stories, the kind of like bridges. So you get like an actual story that's as close to perfect as possible. You can do it in 15 minutes, and then we'll break into groups of 5, and then you have a chance to tell each person your story. The winner of each 5-person group will come up here, and then we'll vote on a winner. It'll be awesome. You guys excited for that? Yeah. All right, cool. So 15 minutes on the clock, and this is kind of one-on-one by yourselves right now, and then we'll break into groups after.